Doctors of Reddit. What's the biggest case of faking it you've ever seen?
Silent scan.
Taking trauma call during surgery residency. Had a prisoner come in after a fight and claimed he couldn't move or feel his legs. All the CT scans and MRIs were normal, but we would shield his legs so he couldn't see them and poke them with needles and other sharp objects with enough force to cause pain. He never flinched or moved his legs at all. He was diagnosed with severe spinal cord injury without radiographic abnormality. He stayed in the hospital for a week. No improvement. Always had one guard with him. One night, they were down in the lobby watching some television, but the guard needed to use the restroom. The patient said, "Where could I possibly go? I'm paralyzed." Guard left him alone. For 2 minutes. Patient last seen sprinting down the road, naked, butt cheeks flapping in the breeze. Made it to a city 4 hours away by car before he was caught again. I have never seen anyone fake it so well. Truly playing the long con.
Silent scan.
Young, 18 to 20. Woman went running into small rural hospital pretending to have abdominal pain. Police officer had tagged her going 40+ kilometers over the limit, which was stunt driving. As per the new law in Ontario, impound and license suspension automatic. Cop followed her into her and apparently said he'd be waiting for her when she left. Locum staff such as myself were housed at a small B&B about 15 minutes away, and there had pre-printed order sets to be done before we arrived. When I arrived, she flat out admitted that she just came in because she freaked out and didn't stop. I told her we'd give her 45 minutes to call her parents' family before I booted her, except BHCG came back positive, and subsequent ultrasound came back showing extremely early ectopic. Officer figures out something is up when he hears air ambulance call come in over radio. She was completely asymptomatic, and just worked out that she dodged both charges and a life-threatening issue by accident. It was definitely a WTF moment.
Silent scan.
My brother was an EMT for 2 years, and he told me this. People will try to use the ambulance as a means for transportation from Fulton to Oswego, because the hospital is in Oswego, by faking seizures. Sometimes, when the head EMT guy was feeling fun and knew that the person was faking, he'd say something like, "Man, it's weird that he's having seizures, but not peeing himself." Apparently the person would kind of snap out of it for a second, weigh up the repercussions, then either pee themselves or stop faking. I thought that was hilarious.
Silent scan.
Had a patient when I was an intern, feigning blindness. She would constantly be playing on her smartphone, only furiously trying to hide it when someone from the care team came into her room. The best was when my attending one day strolled past her room and threw his hand up in a highly exaggerated hello wave. She started to throw her arm up too, but caught herself halfway through, then threw her hand back into her lap and pretended to be staring off into nothing.
Silent scan.
Ophthalmology technician. People pretend to be blind all the time. Go to check their eye pressure with the tonopin, a device you poke them directly into the eye with, and they go, "What the puck is that thing?" When I worked family practice admin, the clinic I was working in was in the country and had been passed along through various doctors over the years, starting from about 1960. Holy God. The old tonometer they had looked like something from the Middle Ages, and the general opinion of the clinic was that it doesn't get used anymore. It was like a museum. The previous doc never got rid of anything, so you had drawers filled with metal aniscopes and things.
Silent scan.
I came to her, I was a nurse at the time, for stomachache. When asking him about history, he randomly mentions a fight with his girlfriend, where she left in a tizzy, and he fell asleep on the couch. 20 minutes later, when we see the CT, he has a satellite cable remote wrapped in a condom lodged in his rectum. I suppose he intended to frame her. Didn't get to hear the conversation he had with the doctor. I was curious how he was going to explain why she was nice enough to wrap it in the condom. Why would they start with a CT scan? Remote viewing.
Silent scan.
Nurse. Bringing a patient back to a room who said he had kidney stones. I had him stop at the bathroom and get a urine sample. Dude comes out with the specimen cup that literally has a piece of concrete in it. Looked him in the eye, expecting some sort of joke. He was serious. I threw it away and walked his dumbass back to the waiting room to contemplate his stupidity. My next door neighbor would drink a 12-pack of Mountain Dew a day and keep kidney stones year-round to get pills. He had a pretty sweet deal too, getting 90 Lorases, 90 Xanax and 90 something else, I forget, every month from his doctor. He just couldn't stop doing other drugs and pissing dirty. I tell this story just because I was impressed with his determination to hurt himself and get surgery once a year, just to get high. Like, the absolute determination that takes. My mother is a recovering addict, and had been getting the same pills around that time. And I don't recall her intentionally hurting herself. She just went with already messed up issues, before she got herself into a clinic to get clean. Added, thanks for the gold, man. Who knew talking about my former junkie neighbor would get me gold? If you're reading this, Jerry, you had to know this was about you. Love you, man. Hope you get your shit together.
Silent scan.
Resident. On nights I had a gentleman pseudo seizing. Really sad, as this is common with PTSD and other mental health issues. Sternal rubs weren't doing anything. Basically rubbing a knuckle in their chest, which we often do to wake somnolent patients but has other uses. So I'm casually talking to him, telling him what we're doing. I do this with patients that can hear me or not. Then I tell him we're going to raise him up in the bed and go to put an arm under his shoulder to move him. He looks at me and says, I can do it myself. Proceeds to move up in the bed, then continues his seizing. Bless his heart. I hope he gets the help he needs. Added, yes, the bless his heart is sincere. Mental health is a drastically undertreated, not addressed aspect of our medical system. And I have great compassion for these folks. Yes. This has to be treated as a real seizure until proven otherwise, in case it does happen to be real. Thanks for everyone that brought up pseudo seizures are antiquated. And NES or psychogenic non-epileptic seizures is much more accurate, meaning not having changes in brain waves consistent with epilepsy on EEG. Also, sternal rubs are very painful and are used sparingly when it is necessary to ascertain a patient's state, when powerful interventions depend on the information we are able to rapidly acquire. Not something to be taken lightly. Anyone with NES, there are clinics that can help you. Please seek out help. There is no reason to be ashamed, though ignorance and judgment is prevalent in any field.
Silent scan.
I'm a doctor. I used to tell stories about things like this, but lately I've come to realize that many people who are faking it have a severe psychologic trauma. Example, child sexual abuse, which is manifesting in physical symptoms, or some other bad cause for their factitious disorder. Even for the malingerers too. They're usually in a terrible place in life despite how much fun it is to read about their stories. We should treat both types of people with compassion and understand the circumstances that brought them to that place in life. I totally had a patient who nearly killed herself, injecting her own poop into her skin though. That was pretty wild.
Silent scan.
I had a doctor accuse me of faking feeling like shit and wasting everyone's time. The nurse came in after, and we were talking, and she asked if I had started any new medications. Turned out that what I was experiencing was a bad reaction to antidepressants, and they were making my body feel like it was dying. So thanks to nurses for listening, and CK that hospital for overworking everyone, to the point that the doctor didn't have time to figure out it was my medication.
Silent scan.
Just have to throw this in for the doctors to laugh at. My aunt once phoned an ambulance, told them that she had peed pure blood. They sent out the emergency car to get there faster, and an ambulance. They arrived to her, lying in her bed as though she's about to die, surrounded by members of her church. They take her in, and to their shock, her kidneys showed absolutely zero signs of trauma or illness. They continue to investigate, and find that there's nothing serious wrong. At that point they fully know she's lied about peeing pure blood, because that doesn't just happen for no reason. But she insisted to everyone at home and at church that all of their signs and tests were wrong even though she was fine. I have a treasure trove of stories like this.
Silent scan.
Intern year on medicine. Guy showed up with fevers, chills, severe pain, with strange forms of mold and other odd bacteria growing out of his blood cultures. We were treating him with IV antibiotics, antifungals, and giving him narcotics for the pain. Then, the insurance company calls. This man is on their blacklist. Yes, that's the thing. He has racked up millions of dollars of medical bills by going from hospital to hospital and getting admitted for these same symptoms. His policy was cancelled, so he started doing it with his ex-wife's insurance policy. They clearly explained that they would not be paying a single cent for any of his care. A nurse walked in on him doing something secretive, and he immediately tried to hide it as she walked in. We searched the room, and under his mattress, found his stash of needles that he was using to inject his own fecal matter and other trash into his veins to make himself septic. He was discharged immediately, but maintained his innocence the whole time, even as he was wheeled out the door.
Silent scan.
When I worked in the air in Egypt, it was a fashionable thing for high school girls to pretend they have fainted for some reason, and also lots of guys who got arrested would pretend to be unconscious to avoid interrogation. So we had 5 to 10 of those per day. so it was a common practice there to shoot some rubbing alcohol in an unconscious patient nose to make sure they aren't pretending, before wasting precious resources on them.
Silent scan.
My sister, when she was like 8, always wanted casts, springs, crutches, and glasses for attention at school. When she went in for her eye exam, she had 20/20's vision, but lied to the eye doctor when they'd compare the two lenses. You know, these lens 1 or lens 2 clear. She would always pick the less clear one, in hopes they'd prescribe her glasses. Obviously the doctor could tell she was lying, based on her answers, so they came out and told my parents that they knew she was lying. I always laugh when I get my eye exams done now, and have to explain the entire story to the doctors. But my parents were nice, and told her that she needed glasses, so they bought her frames with lens that had no prescription in them. As expected, she wore them to school.
Silent scan.